Hey everyone, Adrian here. Welcome to the Conversations with Adrian podcast. Today I'm joined by Matt Roeske. Matt, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. It's an interesting thing with the concept I was thinking of this morning was the concept of time, because right here in Australia, it's 9 a.m. on a Friday morning. But what time is it? You're in Arizona, is that right?
Yep. So it's 4 p.m. PST right now.
Yeah, right. So you're the day before Thursday. So I'm from the future.
You are right now. You
Yeah,
are
yeah.
giving us the future predictions.
Yeah, mate, everything works out. We won, so you got
Like,
nothing to worry about. Okay, I've done all the hard work for you, so it's all good. Mate, we've got a lot to talk about, and I'm very mindful of your time. I appreciate you sharing so much information. I discovered you on Instagram, and one of the things that I really like about what you do is sharing knowledge around how people can, I guess, take control back in their lives. There's a lot that's gone on in the last couple of years. So I really value all of your content, and I'd like to talk to a lot of those things. But I guess before we do that, I wouldn't mind you sharing with me your background and a bit of your story, because I'm very curious to know what was the catalyst for you getting to this point in time where you are now. There must have been something that's gone on in your life that triggered you in maybe one or more ways that has brought you to this moment.
so in the short story, because it can be a long story, but in the short story, it was basically I was in the health and fitness world for a long period of time. I watched people do all types of feats of strength, lifting 1,000 pounds, deadlifting 1,000 pounds, doing all kinds of crazy things, and watching energy in front of me. And as I went through the transition of being in the health and fitness world, I started to, get more into foods and understand more into food and how we should be eating healthy and what we should be eating and all these things. But I had a lot of health ailments that started to occur during that time, and I couldn't figure out what they were. And slowly, after I transitioned out of the fitness world and just kind of started doing a lot of time, like spending time with myself and going out hiking and spending time in nature, I started realizing all of this is connected to energy. Every single thing that we eat, we drink, everything that's around us, that all emits energy. And that energy can be either healing or it could be damaging to our body. And as I watched this documentary, it was called GMOs Revealed. It was a 22-hour documentary. I learned that our food is no longer what it was in 1902. It's completely changed. It's been gene edited, pesticides, sprays, toxins, chemicals, all kinds of stuff that is not a good thing to put into our body. And so as I started to change my diet, I started to notice that my health drastically improved. Now, what was interesting was through my health journey, I talked to a lot of professionals and they were telling me it was genetic. I'm getting older, and I was like 27 at the time. So I don't know how I'm getting older and it's genetic and anything like that. But so I realized that the professionals that I was talking to only had 5 hours of nutrition in 10 years of schooling. So the people that I'm talking to are not addressing the root cause or going towards the root cause. So as I started to learn about these things, I started to try different diets and try different things, test out different things. And then I got into different superfoods. And I started studying different things with mushrooms. I started experimenting with chaga mushroom, lion's mane, cordyceps. I even had some out of body experiences with chaga mushroom, which was really fascinating. But I started getting into all of these different things. And I started to realize that why are we not eating this way? Why are we not eating full spectrum, like and high quality and high nutrients and all of these things? Why are we trying to focus on something that's like one ingredient at a time or something that's a single nutrient? Because our body doesn't work that way. When you go to eat an apple, you eat the whole apple. Every part of that apple goes into your body, and your body breaks that down and then starts to enable certain pathways. So as I got into all of these things, I started studying just a whole bunch of different topics, leading to different rabbit holes. And a lot of them were on the scarcity situation, because a lot of the times we're told about scarcity, we're running out of things, we're running out of food and water and all this nonsense. But I started going to all these different rabbit holes and exploring things, and it led me to these magical superfoods that we now have on our website, cultivateelevate.com. But all different ways to heal pathways and turn the body back on, because a lot of the times we're missing nutrients and the pathways have been disabled over time. So our website, it has a plethora of information. That's why it's kind of a summary of everything all in one. But everything that I've learned from the from the last, I would say 10 to 15 years is all put onto the website of all different types of things related to health, related to clothing, related to frequency, related to energy, related to gardening. All of those things are combined into one website of a plethora of information. But it all started with just asking questions and thinking things didn't add up. And I think that's what we should all do when it comes to any of the information in which we're told or sold.
Yeah, 100%. There's a sort of a quickening going on in the last couple of years. Would you agree? It's almost like when you would talk to like a 22-hour documentary. I'd have to get a hold of that one. That's epic. But I remember watching the Zeitgeist movies years ago, or the documentaries, back in 2000 and I think maybe 5, 6, or 7, something around that sort of era. And so that was that kind of entry point into the banking system and all those sorts of things. And you were just scared to share that information with anyone else because it was so far out of anyone's perspective as to what was a conspiracy theory or a normal thing. But in the last couple of years, it just seems like this, massive crescendo of new information has come to light, and people like yourself have taken a hold of that and kind of just said, well, there's no use just me knowing this information. I need to share all of that out. And to me, like I'm like a sponge with all this kind of stuff. It's just been a slow creep since the mid 2000s, early 2000s. And then I've kind of like really ramped up everything and started to implement that into my life. And so I think that that's probably more of an important part of it, is you need to embody these values and these belief systems and actually practically implement them into your life. So you start to reap the benefits of, all the goodness that comes from it, right?
100%. I mean, that's the thing. You learn so much through all of these different awakenings, whether it's water, whether it's food, whether it's energy, whether it's barefoot grounding, connecting with nature. I spend a ton of time in nature. I mean, all the time. I'm trying to be out in nature as much as I can, out in the sun. The sun is so healthy for us. It's not even funny. So all of these things in which we've had inverted truths on. And as we start to understand all these things and we implement in our life, we start to just become, really a different person. That's the best way to describe it, because I've realized that we're self-regenerating beings. We can heal so quickly. It's wild, but we're put into a mentality or a frequency of a low vibration that basically tries to tell us either, it's genetic and you're getting old, and then these toxins which we're placing into the body can actually start to break down the body very quickly. So when we start to bring all these beautiful organic foods and structured water, and we start going out into nature and we start wearing, natural clothing such as linen and all these beautiful clothings and things like that, the body just elevates itself. It's just natural. It just comes natural. And I feel like that's why there's been so much information that has been suppressed on all of these topics for such a long period of time, because it keeps people in a box. And like you were saying, with everything that's kind of coming out, it's kind of just, the speed in which things are coming out now are so fast. It's wild. And I've realized that there are so many people, and I was saying this to a friend yesterday, that are phenomenal reporters now. Phenomenal. Like they should get an award for the amount of information that they are pulling up and showing, and then putting it into videos too on top of it, because it takes a while to edit, but that's the magic, is that's what people have always wanted. The truth is what people want. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want to be misled. They don't want to be told that this is causing this, but in reality, it's this. And I think that's also part of the awakening we're seeing right now, is people wanting to have the truth and not be just, get a bunch of baloney all the time. Because every time you turn on, Operation Mockingbird or the television or whatever, they just keep responding the same nonsense. That's why people are over it. And I feel people are more inclined to listen to conversations like me and you are having right now, where it's just people being real. And that's it, like just straight to the point and trying to figure things out, because all the ways we were figuring things out don't seem to make a lot of sense, and even like you were saying in the time zone things in the beginning, a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense of what we were taught.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the mind boggles, because you start to think, well, if this has been a long held belief of mine and it's now untrue, what else is untrue? And that is a frightening thought at times, but it's also liberating, because you start to scratch the surface of a few things, and then you start to really peel back the layers of what is going on. And I think you're right in terms of the conversations that I listen to every day on podcasts like this, and I share information with great people like yourself, because people are sick of the contrived, orchestrated information that is drip fed and filtered in such a way that is only giving us bite-sized bits of information and keeping us in that, like you said, that low vibration, that feeling of fear and worry and doubt and lack and scarcity and all of those things that have really paralyzed us over a long period of time. And I think a large part of what you're saying is it almost seems there's no other way to think about it other than there is some sort of grander plan that is to their benefit to keep us sort of fat, sick, and stupid, and devoid of any kind of free thought, and distracting us by bits and pieces that are going on in the world, whether it be sport or entertainment or natural disasters or so-called natural disasters and all those sorts of things. So it's all this sort of shiny objectitis that we've been suffering from for far too long. And what I love about your teaching is it's really about getting back to connectivity with nature, connectivity with yourself. And that is that elevation that we need to really shout from the rooftops, right?
I totally agree. Once you start learning all the different things, even just about abundance, like how we're never running out of water, we're never running out of food. I did a lot of talks about electroculture and how electroculture dates back to the 1835 Royal Agriculture Society of Australia and New South Wales. So you go back and you see that they were having abundance in 1835 with electroculture by harnessing the atmospheric energy to increase yields. And the Royal Agriculture Society was writing essays on this. So it's like, how can this be debunked or not true if the Royal Societies were using this? But the information was lost over time and then made us dependent on chemicals and all of these other ways. And like you said, as minds slowly forgot, or the information was lost, then we started thinking, oh, well, now we need X, Y, and Z, like GMOs and Monsanto or something as a replacement. But it's like, no, we just need the earth. That's just what we need. And same with the water situation. They put us into the scarcity mindset. We're always running out of water, but we live on a water planet. There's even scientists who talked about how there's oceans underneath the ocean. So how can we run out of water if there's water underneath the water? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Or, for example, why water is always coming up from inside the earth up on top of the land, primary water. And there was a great book, New Water for a Thirsty World, that pretty much exposed all of that. But yeah, once you learn all this information, it just changes your perspective. It makes you hungry for more. You want to keep learning more because now you feel, like you said, you've been told a lie on one thing. So how many other things have you been told a lie on? And it makes you I feel like deep down in your soul want to find the truth, because that's what we kind of, like I said, resonate towards. And even simple things. I mean, that's why they spend, 18 years teaching people and ingraining something into their mind for that amount of time, because they want this outcome after that, where the person then believes that narrative. It's kind of like if you look at the 1969 moon landing and you rewatch that video, it's hilarious. It's one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. Even with the video they just showed with India of them landing on the moon, it looks like a video game from like the 1970s. You have to really ask questions on the things in the show that is being presented, because it is TV, it's a television. So it gets you more into it. And I've started collecting a lot of books and going into books from the 1800s to the 1900s, and it is just remarkable and astounding the information that you find on like Nikola Tesla and all these different people, and a different side that Google doesn't show you. I've realized that Google will censor and block a lot of information from the other side. And that's what I think we're also, as a society, hungry for, because we're sick of being on the system where we have to be dependent on energy, on food, on water, and all these materials, when we can be independent of all of that.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, it's funny when you think about some of the things that you used to just take for granted as gospel truth, that this is just the way it is. And I think the last couple of years, in terms of the foods that we eat, the water that we drink, what's in the atmosphere, vaccines is obviously being a huge one in the last couple of years, because I don't know if you've got kids, but I've got three, and when they were born, and the midwife said, "Oh, we need to just go and give them the shots," you just hand them over, and away you go. You didn't think twice about it. So I've almost got this sense of like feeling stupid that I never asked any further questions. I just took it as that was the way, and never really questioned anything outside of all of that. So do you find, though, like when you look back in your history of how you are as a human being, were you always a goody two shoes in terms of, you know, following the lines and staying inside the lines, or were you quite rebellious and free thinker and, you know, the leader of the pack, so to speak?
I mean, in school, I really never. I mean, honestly, after third grade, I think I stopped paying attention. Like I just kind of it felt really boring for me, and I would kind of just like see. I would see how many ways I could get out of doing something rather than doing it. I would spend probably more time trying to figure out how I can like change the file and then print it out in a different font so that I didn't have to hand the paper in today. You know, things like that, just silly things. But I think that was just because for me, it just wasn't. I don't know. I just felt bored, you know, and a lot of the stuff I felt I was learning, even the books and the readings, they're just, I don't know, they just felt boring. But I will tell you, I have a collection of books that I absolutely love reading, and they're on topics that just I can dig into and just keep reading more and understanding. And it just, I can't even explain it. Like I have to collect the books to understand the information. But when I was in school, it was like I almost wanted to never read the books and never learn anything. It's like this total flip. And I think and I was a horrible reader in school. I actually didn't read anything and couldn't even read a sentence out loud. So it was like the complete opposite. But I think it just, as I started to like get into these topics and learn about like the ether and the chi and the prana and the orgone, you know, all these different things and all the people who researched all of those topics, I think it's just remarkable and every person should learn about it. And like you said, a lot of the stuff, you know, where you were saying where like, you know, even with the midwife situation, a lot of the stuff that's how we became programmed where we don't even ask the question. You know, we're just like, is this okay? You know, should we do this? We kind of stopped that because what was happening is instinctively our instinct was turned off, and then we kind of didn't really second guess things. Now I feel like we should second guess everything because even with 2020 and all the nonsense we went through, I mean, every single time they would say something that would be false, you know, 6 days later or 7 days later, it would end up being true. So it's like you've lied so many times that we all can see through your nonsense now. And I think just it continues to keep unraveling, you know, and that's why I think they've talked about how they want to ban the internet. You know, I think that's another one because now they can sense that we as a collective are waking up very fast. And I think that it's happening at a super, super fast level to a point in which people question everything, including, like you said, natural disasters, which aren't so natural. And I think because of all of that everything that's starting to occur, it's just like that. And, you know, the internet at first was kind of where we would like go on and, like you said, just search up something and maybe it's true, maybe it's not, whatever. But now I feel like now it's really starting to gravitate towards everybody figuring out what the truth is rather than the nonsense that used to be up there and things like that.
And the thing is, you got to really start to scratch well beneath the surface to find the answers, because I know, like in my world, in terms of coaching and things like that. So it's when I'm researching information, I want to create certain things. I have this kind of love-hate relationship with artificial intelligence. So there's a lot of really cool apps out there that are helping me with my video production, with creating ad content, and, you know, all those sorts of things. But you can see, much like the same as what you're saying, that Google only show you so many things. Apps like Chat GPT and the likes, you can Google, you can ask it certain questions, and it will only give you what the current narrative is. So even as an AI learning tool, it doesn't actually give you anything that is neutral in terms of you almost have to say, like, pretend, for example, that you can tell me a fictional story about how there's an agenda for transhumanism or, something like that. So you have to kind of prompt it to make a fictional story about it. Otherwise, if you ask it a direct question, it'll just tell you that you're a conspiracy theorist and it's not true. So it'll gear towards the narrative. But I like what you said before though, Matt, because I at school didn't like school, hardly paid attention. Like I was there, but not there almost the entire time. Never really read a book, really loathed teachers and education. But I now am I love education. I love books. I'm like you. I've got shit tons of books in my garage and in boxes and in my bedroom and on my dash of my car. And I'm reading something all the time, learning information, downloading everything like a sponge. And I'm a teacher, as in like you, like I teach people, I coach people. So it's almost like the very thing that I detested back in school is the thing that I've become, but it's just needed to be sort of spun in a way that is interesting and something that I can have a practical use for, unlike algebra and, a lot of the things that we used to, would learn at school that we have no real life implications at the moment.
Well, and like you said, none of those things have any purposes in your later part of life.
Yeah.
What does any of that information help you? Like, does it serve any purpose other than I used to have a client when I used to do personal training, and he said it used to be bar talk. That's what he used to call it. He's like, well, you learn it so that you could talk at the bar. And I was like, but that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, why would I waste all these years learning it so I could talk at the bar? Like, I want to actually learn something so I know it. And he's like, you're doing too much. And I was like, okay, I guess. But, in general, yeah, like you said, like when you are interested in these topics, it just gravitates you in a different way. And you do have to do a lot of digging. Even the stuff I was talking about with the electroculture in the New South Wales newspapers, those are from archives of a website. I think it's troves.au, but it's like from an archived website, which is very difficult to find. It took me a long time to find that website. Then you have to go through like the pictures and the articles and then the dates and change all the things to certain settings. And it's like, man, they really hide this stuff, like but it is out there, but it's challenging. But like I said, like you were saying, you gravitate towards it naturally. It's like just instinctively you want to find the information versus a lot of the stuff with the schooling system is just the same repetitive stuff. And I've done a lot of talks talking about our schooling system because the educational system was bought out by the Rockefellers in I think it was 1902 or 1906 when he started the General Education Board. So everything that gets filtered through our educational system is filtered through them, and then even that goes with the medical board too, because you could look up Rockefeller University and all the stuff. And actually he has the documents related to the 2020 nonsense too, as well. So you start to connect a lot of dots and see, this is why I'm kind of being, shown this information. But if I see it over here, I just see such a different light and such a different life. And that's what I've been about and trying to put out as much as I can to show a different side, because honestly, it gets so old of just these lies of fear and scarcity, because nobody should have to live like that. Every person should have abundance. And when I got into a lot of the old world buildings, when you look at all these old world cathedrals and all these things, the word abundance is all over them. It's just they use a V instead of a U. But the word abundance used to be inscribed and embedded into these buildings. So you start to sit there and go, people knew about that, but they tore this down because people would then think, wait, abundance? Okay, wow. Okay, that's a really different way of thinking. And it said, the truth shall set ye free. And there's another thing that's constantly blocked, is the truth. And on that topic, with the injections that they're trying to roll out and everything else, there was an article that just came out that they were talking about in Australia. They're going to get rid of the pamphlet inside the injections because they were saying that will help save paper. That's the purpose. They said nobody really reads it, so we're going to get rid of it because it's too long. That's basically what they were saying. And it'll help us save paper. So it's like, but you're not going to tell people what's going into their body if they have a question. And the article was saying they can just go online and look it up. And it's like, yeah, but they can't go online while you're doing this thing to them in the moment. So it's like, you see a lot more to a lot of this, and you have to really connect the dots on the nonsense that we are facing.
So interesting you mentioned New South Wales. That's my home state. So, I'm from Wollongong, which is south of Sydney. And so it's interesting you bring that up. wanted to ask you, when you started this conversation, you talked about some of the things that you're doing in your own life, which improved your health, and you had some health issues and things like that. Can you talk to me about what are some of the things that you started to experience as a result of changing things dietary, whether it be just your environment? Because I know that, like, from what I've researched about you have you moved places? Like, there's certain things in terms of like an energetic frequency, you really adapted a lot of this. So can you talk to a lot about that? I'd like to really know what it is you feel on a sort of the biofeedback and an energetic level, cognitive level, all those sorts of things.
So this one, I like that question because it can be in multiple different things. So I originally was in Chicago for a long time, and Chicago, the energy never felt, I mean, I had energy. I would get pumped up and I would pump other people up and get them pumped up. But I also felt very tired and lethargic all the time. It was a strange feeling. Always tired, always lethargic. And I thought that that was really strange. And it was interesting when I met a lady and I did an Akashic reading in 2019. She said, Arizona is your perfect state. And I said, what? And she goes, Arizona is the perfect state for you. You're going to have the most energy you're ever going to have. And I'll tell you, since I've moved to this state, it is like that. It is just, there is just an energy that I cannot explain. And it could be part of the heat and the sun, but there's a lot of ley lines here. You have Sedona, you have a whole bunch of different spots. I mean, anywhere that you drive, north, south, east, west, you can feel these ley lines or these vortexes. And I feel like the more you clean up your body, the more you can feel them even more. Because I think people used to be very in tune. And so as I started to clean up my body, and I do a lot more fasting, I only eat maybe, I don't know, maybe once a day I have a meal. I do mostly like a combination. It's just a combination of things. I'll do paleo, vegetarian, or we'll make like bread from scratch, like organic sourdough bread. But we'll do raw milks, unpasteurized milks, cheese, like stuff like that. But everything's very light. I don't do anything really heavy anymore. Back when I was in Chicago, I would eat about 2.5 pounds of meat a day. So it was a very different lifestyle. But what I've noticed is since I've changed all these things, my energy is just through the roof. I don't have to sleep as much. I get up earlier. I'm more mentally clear. My stomach doesn't hurt. I don't have maybe swollenness in my face or swollenness in my tonsils. I used to have tonsillitis a lot because of the pasteurized milk and the whole pasteurization process. Once I switched that and went unpasteurized, that went away like that. I used to have a lot of allergies, seasonal allergies. I learned that was fragrance. Any type of scented product would instantaneously cause me to sneeze and mess me up. And as soon as I got rid of scents, that was it. It was fixed. But all these little changes have just improved my health overall and have just basically made me be able to pick up on the energy more of things, even people. Like even as we talk, and your energy and your good spirit, and I can feel that. All these things you start to pick up on, and I feel like just from being more in tune. And as we clean up our body, and you look at like even like monks and all the people who, up in Tibet and things like that, they're the same way. They do a lot of fasting. If they eat something, it's very high quality. They spend a lot of time in nature. They do a lot of barefoot grounding. They wear usually linens, like the royals did, and these things. But all of those things, I think, enhance just your natural energy and your aura. And there's a great book by Valerie Hunt called Infinite Mind, which talks all about your aura and how your aura picks up on everything. And that's what Akashic readers are doing. They're tapping into those things. But it's just remarkable when you start getting into energy and all of these things and how much we've lost connect with the connectivity with that, and usually children are very connected with this. They'll be like, oh, you see that in the corner, or I feel something here, or whatever it may be. But as we get older and the toxins build up and then the stories get put into our head, we kind of lose that hidden, talent or skill or hobby. But as you start to clean up the body and you start to adjust everything and bring the energy back to the cells and bring back the conductivity, everything starts to flip like that.
So interesting. I picked up on a few things through all of that in terms of the energy and I guess the way that your body would heal itself. So it's that again is a paradigm shift in terms of we've been led to believe that there's a solution to every ailment that we have, and it typically is derived from a pill or a medicine or something like that. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you've been able to change your life and lifestyle and the things that you do and eat energetically, and that has changed or had the chain reaction of just curing yourself from within. And I would imagine, because even on an emotional level, like even when you said to me, like, I can pick up on your energy, so it's the same going back. I can just see in your face, like, there's a softness and there's a warmth about it. Like, you just feel very centered and very calm in terms of your demeanor. So is that something that you found as a contrast from the old version of Matt versus now, that you were sort of, like you said, there was a lethargic, but were you at times anxious or wound up or hyper emotional or closed off and guarded and all those sorts of things? Did you feel that on an emotional level there was sort of an element of release on that side of things?
I would say, yeah, I was very lethargic, but like hyper at the same time. I know it sounds really weird. Like I would have bursts of energy, but then be super exhausted. And it would like continue like that, almost like chronic fatigue. And it was just like I would get a burst and then come back down. And then whatever it may be, or I take let's say caffeine or pre-workout, and then it'd be up and then it'd be right back down. Versus now it's so much more steady. I mean, it's very steady and yeah, very focused. Like I'm very focused. Like even when I'm reading and I'm absorbing and I'm trying to piece things together, I'm very focused to go, okay, that sounds like that goes with this, and this book sounds like this book goes with this. And then I start to connect these dots. Versus before, I think I was so hyped up, that's the best way to describe it, that was not allowing me to get like to be focused. I would just had energy, which was fine, but I couldn't use that energy towards anything else because I wasn't sitting and focusing myself. And I feel like with spending a lot of time with nature, even writing things down, using a planner, being, like adamant about scheduling and doing things like that, I think that's helped a lot. And yeah, like from the time in the past, it's a very different thing because like you said, we were taught to like take a pill and that pill will fix us. But the problem with even the pills that these professionals are giving out to the people is a lot of people don't realize that those pills have deionized water in it. Deionized water does not have an electrical charge. So if you go to consume that pill and it has deionized water, it takes the electrical charge out of you. So when you're going for this remedy or solution from this professional and they're going, here, take 3 of these and 5 of these, those contain deionized water, which is taking the charge from you, which would make you more tired over time. Versus, for example, if you were drinking out of copper, you're bringing back the electrical conductivity of the water, bringing back the charge. So I started to realize that everything is just a charge and everything is just about conductivity. And even when you look at plants and birds and animals, same thing. They get charged up. And then based on the cycles of the moon, then they get even more charged up, depending if it's a full moon or not and whatever. But all of these things I never really paid attention to because I don't feel that I was on the same wavelength to pick those things up. Because the foods and the things I was eating prior were not allowing me to pick up any of these frequencies. Versus now I feel I can pick up all of those frequencies and then some in comparison to prior to.
So interesting. Okay, let's talk more to water. You brought up a bunch, and the copper. I noticed you got the copper cup there. Only just yesterday, I went and bought some copper wire, popped it in, wrapped it around the coil around the timber, popped it in the little planter box that we got outside. I've got some timber ready to go for my gardens and starting to grow some food and things like that. And so that to me is an enlightening and enlivening thought process to go through, because I like cooking. I like eating great foods. It kind of goes hand in hand with all that. And I really have a strong desire to connect myself back with nature. And it's interesting from my perspective, because that's the environment that I grew up in. So I don't know how old you are, but when I was younger, so my dad's family is from Italy, mum's family is from here, from Australia, but both of my grandparents had gardens, and they had huge gardens. So my nonno and nonna on my dad's side had fennel, they grew beans, they grew tomatoes, they grew cucumbers. There was a huge avocado tree. They had chooks, and 90% of their backyard was garden. So it's something that I have grown up with. And when you go overseas and you go into the culture of like the villages and things like that, they still operate that way. It's not really the mainstream supermarket chains and things like that. My grandfather on the other side, on the Australian side, was the same, but because they grew up through the war where there was a lot of poverty and you just had to become self-reliant. So in the backyard of his house was, again, probably 50% garden, and there was, chocos on the fence, huge pumpkins. Like, my grandfather was famous for having massive zucchinis, and I'm talking like, maybe 30 centimeters by the girth was like this, and massive pumpkins and those sorts of things. So that's something that in my heritage, like, I have grown up with. And when I went overseas and spent time in the villages, that was a part of that experience that I gravitated towards naturally. I felt alive. I remember going to the villages of Macedonia, walking in the backyard, seeing the vineyards and things like that, and crying that it was just such a beautiful moment. I've done the picking of apple orchards and all that kind of stuff. It was such a great thing. So the reason why I share that with you is because I feel there is a trend to people like you and I that are kind of going towards, I don't want to be reliant upon the mainstream food chains and things like that. I want to be self-reliant. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to be sovereign, whether it be financial or whether it be physical, emotional, and all those sorts of things. So maybe you can lead us down to, or give us a bit of a snapshot and education on the water, how we can, like, maybe a bit of history about that, and then the copper things, because I love that side of the energy conductor. You see it on the old buildings, you see the copper balls. In Europe, it's everywhere. It's so prominent around the ancient sort of monuments and churches and things like that. So maybe you can go into that for me.
Of course. So the easiest way for when it comes to the water, you can get yourself a brass spout, and you can attach that if you want it to your hose, or you could get yourself a copper watering can, and that will help structure the water as it comes out of a little spout. Because usually, like, for example, the copper watering cans, they have a curved spout. They never have a straight line. All this stuff, the way they create nowadays, all has a straight line, which doesn't make any sense. Water doesn't move that way. It moves in a curve. So you want to get yourself a watering can that has a curvature to it so that it can curve the water as the water is poured onto the plants. And that's where Victor Schauberger's work comes from. Everything about spinning water. As water goes through a spin, it creates a vortex. As it goes through a vortex, it starts to levitate, and it actually starts to float. And it's really fascinating if you get into Victor Schauberger's work, because he was the creator of the flying saucer, the technology we see that the people in charge have, and then they try to say it's like aliens and whatever else. But anyway, so you have Victor Schauberger and his work, but he was also big on the copper, like you just said. And what he noticed was when people were using copper in their soils, such as copper gardening tools, they had tremendous increases in yields. They had less pests. They didn't have to use pesticides. They had more bees, more pollinators, more insects, all this beautiful part. But when they started having all this iron, he started noticing that the iron was actually decimating the soil and causing the soil to get all clumpy and hard, and basically the water would sit on top of it. And if you think about when people are like, oh, we had a flash flood come in, it's because the water is sitting on top of the soil, because all the iron tools have basically made it so that the water cannot go into the soil. So when we start putting copper into the soil, it actually allows the soil to take on the water, and then it also increases the electrical charge of that soil. Because if there's no charge in the soil, you don't have any life for your plants. So as you create these little electroculture copper antennas and you start placing them into your gardens, you start to notice you have increased yields, more birds, more pollinators, more bees, because they can pick up on that energy. Because like you just said, the old world cathedrals had those antennas all over them. Every single time they go to, do a reconstruction of a building, that's the first thing they take off. And I've realized is because that's actually balancing out the atmosphere and balancing out the area. And if you take it one step further, the old world buildings used to have for example, an antenna on top. There was a copper wire that would go down, and it would go right into the sacred garden that was next to it. And you'd always see these royal people and they say, oh my gosh, look at how beautiful their garden is. The reason being is because they were
That's why.
tapping into the ether this whole time, and then obviously creating it in cool shapes and sacred designs and things like that. But they understood this technology. So you would see it and sit there and think, wow, that's beautiful. But you or any person can do that too, just with a little copper and just a little bit of wood.
Wow. That's so interesting you say that. When I was in Europe, there seems to be a lot of the archways. There was a lot of the copper domes, and all of that just seems to be very strategically aligned with everything that was in that particular place. Does that make sense? So if you go to, like, for example, the Schönbrunn Palace, you've kind of got the palace itself, and then you've got the gardens, and everything was kind of symmetrical and geometry, like the geometry of it was all circular, and there was something in the middle, and that was sort of going up towards the sky. Like, it just seemed to have a I don't know, everything just made sense. That was all, like, lined up in a way that it was kind of generating the energy that was towards it. When you go to certain monasteries, for example, in Europe, I remember going to a 9th century monastery in Macedonia and taking my, like, thongs or flip-flops off, and putting my feet onto the stone, and you could sense and feel the energy coming through your feet and vibrating through your body. It was almost like a tingling feeling, like you were tapped into some sort of source, which you were, I suppose, like you were tapping into that energy source. So it's prevalent throughout our history and culture. But like you said, it's just something that's been hidden and taken away and substituted with, like, just an artificial replacement, I guess. So that's something that we kind of need to be mindful of as well, right?
Well, and we've switched the materials. We've switched to more DuPont plastic and then using iron instead, or aluminum. All this cheap stuff. That's the best way to describe it. All of those buildings that you just said, they all resonate at our frequency of our body and the water in our body. There's actually people who have gone in and they've done tests where they would take a glass of water, they would bring it into a cathedral, and they would see the same shapes on the cathedral on the window as the glass of water that they're testing. So you really start to get there and start to think, wow, if that can happen, this is absolutely remarkable of what's going on, the resonance of our body and the water. But then when we start using all the plastic and all the nonsense that, is sold instead, well, that's not resonating and bringing any frequency. It's actually going against the body. And that's why, like I was saying, going out into nature is the balance and counter towards that. But we don't build with these certain materials that resonate and all have the same charge as our body. But when you get into this history and you see all these things, like you said, like everything is perfectly aligned, like perfect, in an exact same a pyramid or a triangle or a shape or anything. And you sit there and think, you're like, if people were trying to survive during that time, when did they have time to do all that? So you got to really start to ask questions of, there were people on horses and wagon and horses and chariot. When did they have time to do all this? Because it doesn't seem to also fit that narrative either of what they were actually on and who was building all of this.
Man, we could go on for hours about this. That's probably another podcast in itself. Can you tell me the pushback that I've gotten in terms of the electroculture? So not so much pushback, but I guess it's a debate. So it's like, just because you chuck a bit of copper in the soil and your zucchinis or pumpkins grow twice the size, it doesn't mean that it's has any more nutrients or it's any better for you. Like, there's certain things that, again, we've been told over a period of time when it comes to metals, such as copper and silver and gold and things like that. I mean, I've been making my own colloidal silver and colloidal gold and copper for a couple of years now, but you also have that kind of, I guess, old adage of, look, there's dangerous levels of all this. So, what are you actually doing? Are you playing with fire in a sense? So what do you know about that in terms of how the copper reacts to water, reacts to the soil, and what it does to plants? And is that something that is now giving me more energy, or is it actually just creating something that's larger just because it's been almost like injected with a little bit of, like a booster or something like that. That's probably a bad word, but, a steroid or something. Do you know what I mean?
So you're giving first and foremost the soil copper, and it needs the copper because it doesn't have the copper anymore. And the copper is connected to our brain. It's connected to the connective tissues of your body. It's connected to every part of your body. Without copper, your whole body can't even function. So that's the first part. The second part is you're increasing the energy, the aura. And this is interesting because I had a buddy who was actually in Australia who actually started seeing blue bumblebees. And he goes, I've never seen a blue bumblebee once, but I got blue bumblebees coming in my backyard now because I started putting these antennas in my backyard. And he goes, they must be coming from miles away because there's nothing within the vicinity that they can be coming from. So you're increasing the energy. And as you're increasing the energy, you're increasing also the size. And I think people have to be aware that we have no idea how large things are supposed to be. And there was actually a gentleman who was in Germany who was studying static fields and understanding that if certain static fields were placed, if a seed was placed within a certain static field, it would actually go back to basically like its prehistoric seed, and it would grow 6 to 10 times the size with all different stalks. So a piece of corn that you normally see with one stalk would end up being 15 stalks and almost like 30 feet tall. So we have no idea how large things are supposed to be. Then if we get into a nutritional aspect, we can say, yes, this is missing this nutrient and this is missing X, Y, and Z. But where is the energy that's being measured from that? We don't even understand that. If you have two plants, one is grown organically, one is grown conventionally. This one has more nutrients, but this one also has more energy. Now, it might be smaller, but it still can have more energy. And that's one part I feel that's always missing. But as for the size, when I was researching those articles from the New South Wales documents that I was finding, they had wheat that they had to get a train to get it because they had 500,000 tons of it. So it's like, think of how much we can have. And how about this? Even if it is bigger, what does it matter? It's bigger, it's better. We can feed more people. That's kind of what I would rather give people electroculture big zucchinis than give people Monsanto gene edited pesticide food. That's kind of what I've learned between this. Like if I'm going to go for one, I'm going to go for the one from nature. I'm not going to go from the one who used to create DDT is good for me. There's two different personalities there. So, this is the first testing grounds of electroculture. It's only been for like 1 year where everybody kind of started doing it. Next year, we'll see even more. And in this last year, I've had probably, I don't know, I would say about 5,000 messages or more on electroculture of people's gardens going crazy and people yielding the most they've ever yielded in like 15 years. And it's to a point where I realize who knows what even next year will be. And I've realized that the copper also counters the stuff that goes up in the air. All that nonsense that they keep spraying to block out the sun and everything else, that's going down in the root systems of the plants so that the electrical conductivity cannot flow. The copper brings that back so the nutrients and the sap can flow up and down the plants. So I've seen it multiple different ways. I've seen it in my own personal experiences too. But, I even had moringa pods, which were 3 to 4 times the size of the average moringa pod. And I thought I was doing something wild. Then my buddy messaged me and he goes, I've actually doubled that in Florida. And now these are 35 to 40 inches when they're normally supposed to be 6. So it's like, we don't even know, like I said, we have no idea how large things can be. And then also the nutrients that can come from it. And like you just said, the monatomic, makeup of what's coming into the body. Because when you get into colloidals, you're moving into monatomics, which is, quantum energies. And colloidals are part of that too. So we're kind of tapping into that. So who has the test to show that as well? That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think as someone who is skeptical towards this would probably say, well, how do you know what you're putting in your system is doing anything good? And there aren't any long-term studies to prove that it's good or otherwise. So, I mean, that's why I'm interested to get your feedback, because this is something you're implementing into your everyday life. And you hear people like the colloidal silver is something that I'm not sure if you've ever seen that show. That guy took so much silver he started turning blue. He was permanently blue, and so everyone was just like, what are you doing with yourself? And he goes, I thought that the silver was good for me, and I started having so much every day, and now he's got blue skin and he just looks like a blue Oompa Loompa. And I think those sorts of things kind of like scare the shit out of people, because they just say, well, I'm not going to touch it at all because I don't want to end up like that. I mean, I guess the counter of that is that those very people are probably the same people that might drink Coca-Cola every day, or, put shit tons of,
say if
sugar
a
in their
person
system or whatever it is,
I was just going to say, if a person's consuming GMOs or pesticides and chemicals, it's like, if we talk about glyphosate, I could talk about glyphosate for 10 hours, the dangers of that. So a piece of copper in the soil is nowhere near the dangers of glyphosate or pesticides or DDT or any of those toxins which are being created. And when it gets even worse is that, like, you go into a hardware store and all these chemicals are like, destroy this insect, destroy the grass, all these words, which are all like, why would you even buy this? You're destroying you're destroying your backyard to try to produce healthy food.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. You can't do both. You can't have healthy and get that. And a lot of the pesticides, also the number one ingredient in them, I've realized, is iron. And iron blocks up the root system. So you start to look at this and go, why would you want to spray this on? And the last ingredient is usually copper. So it's like, somebody obviously knows that if you put iron in the soil, it'll mess up your plants, and then it'll make you dependent on the grocery store as well. And I've learned through my electroculture experience in this last year, I mean, I've had people message me who are just giving the food out to their friends. I had a lady who was in the UK. She was giving it out to the shelter. She literally put the food in front of her store and just said, take it. She's like, I can't eat it anymore. There's so much food. I don't know what to do with it in my greenhouse. And it's like, how can this be a bad thing? Yeah. How can any of this be a bad thing for humanity? And it's just, I've realized it's, once again, it's the programming, like you just said, that makes us believe that this could be dangerous. But all the things that we mentioned in the previously, DDT, glyphosate, all those things, none of those are dangerous. So it's like, how we have to look at it from every angle and see it from different sides.
Yeah, totally. And a lot of what you speak to, though, too, Matt, is like, that really throws the scarcity mentality out the window straight away. Because if you're thinking about how much you can produce as an individual, so let's say you grow 5 tomato plants and I grow 5 zucchini plants, and my neighbor grows 5, grows a pumpkin patch, for example. Like, we've pretty much got a grocery store on our street that has everything, and we can kind of just swap it over and give each other, whatever we need in order to make a dish of whatever sort, right? So I think that to me is super exciting, because it then again puts people into a state of empowerment. And I think that's probably the thing that is the number one thing that I get in the last couple of years, is like, what can I do? And I did a video about this the other day. I was like, what can I do? I'm just one person. What can we do about this? They're always going to do that. They're always going to be corrupt. They're always going to do the wrong thing by us. There's nothing that we can do within our power. And I just think that's fucking bullshit. I really think that is such a limiting belief, because like you just mentioned, there's so many things you can do on a personal level that just takes your power back, makes you a better, improved, energetic, sovereign being as a strong person individually. But then as a collective, there's something that we can do, which is educate and nourish ourselves, in the mind, body, and soul, and nourish each other. Then on a macro level, in terms of, if we all took our money out of the bank, if we all just stop paying taxes, if we all stopped paying our interest payments, if we all said, right, this week we're all going to stop contributing to the government, and we're going to choke them at the neck, so to speak, in terms of all the things that they do to survive as an organization, like, that would just stop the world overnight, in terms of, like, they wouldn't have any more power over any of us anymore. And they would know straight away that if they did anything that was left of center, that wasn't in the best interest of us, then we would have the power anytime to just cut it off.
Well, and that's the power that we all possess. Like we all have that. You have the ability to say no and no, and this is, and I'm not going to stand for it. And I'm real big on creating independence, whether it's food, whether it's water, whether it's energy, whether it's just having your health, all these different things. Because once you have your health, everything else comes with it. But if we sit and we want to be dependent on somebody who's going to give us something, then what happens is we're in tyranny. That's basically what's happening. I mean, they're controlling every aspect of your life. I mean, and if you want to take it a step further, can we trust the people who are putting injections in our food and in our body and into everything? Can we have trust with these people? Because I can't see anything, like I can't think of one thing ever that they're doing that's actually good. I can't think of one. That's what I've started to realize. What are the positive things? I mean, I feel like even with the electroculture, it's done more for gardeners and people just experimenting and getting creative and starting gardening, like just even trying it just to see if it works. Even if it doesn't work, you can try it again. That's what we were taught in school, is if something doesn't work, you try it again. You don't just instantaneously say it doesn't work. You keep trying, because sometimes you have to change something or a different variable or add something or whatever. And that, I feel, is where like you said, we'll instantaneously dismiss something of what can I do? That's the part two of the television and Operation Mockingbird, is they're not showing how many people are gardening. And let me just give a little rundown of stats just so people are really aware. So if you go on Google and you type in like gardening, whatever, 2020, there were about 200,000 people a month searching for gardening in 2020. So that was about the average. Then you go to 2021, that's when all the nonsense began. It spiked up to 350,000 people a month were searching for gardening. You spike up to now 2022, you're at 500,000. Come this year in 2023, when I looked at the stats, 3 million people a month were looking up gardening. So if you think about what you're not seeing and what you're not being told, is there is quite a revolution happening in the background, which is not being televised, of people realizing, I'm kind of over this. I don't want to peel. I don't want Bill Gates. I don't want any of these things. I'm good. People are sick of it and they're fed up. And there's a lot of people joining that bandwagon. That's the best way to describe it. And it's only going to keep growing because, like you said, is people got pushed into being in this box here and they're over it. And I don't blame them, because it gets old after a while, being like told and whatever else and poisoned and sickened. And even for me, when I had my health issues that went on for, I don't know, I would say 10 to 12 years of my life, there was never a solution. I had to figure it out myself. I had to own up to my health issues and figure it out, because the professionals who I were going to just kept going in a circle with me. And it got really old. And I started figuring out, maybe there's more to all of this than what I'm being told. And we have to look at it in that sense, and also how many other people are doing that. Because even if it's just one person, you don't realize how many more one persons there are who are also doing the exact same thing as you. Because every time we have a thought, 10 other people are having that thought at the exact same time. Because it's always like you text your friend and all of a sudden he's like, hey, you see this? And it's like, yeah, I just saw that. Well, what's the chance? Yeah. Everybody's thinking the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, that's so true. I often ask myself, am I in this little vortex of just surrounding myself with people like yourself, and then I'm in this sort of echo chamber of that I think everything's changing, but it's really not. It's really just a small amount of people. But I like the way that you explain that, because I think that it reminds me of a meme I saw. It was like the Great Resist. You'll own a farm and you'll be happy. It was just like it was the exact opposite of the Great Reset. You'll own nothing. And I think that there's certainly a trend. I mean, that's what I see in my world as well. I see a lot of people going, you know what? I'm sick of the system. I'm sick of being trapped in this cycle of working my freckle off every day just to make ends meet. It's like you said before, abundance is written everywhere. It's written into the DNA of this earth. There's just no shortage of anything. And there's the universe has a way of just producing whatever we need or desire. There is more of it than ever in the history of man. So I really love the way that you think about all of this, because again, like I said to you before, there's been, I keep explaining to people that the last couple of years has probably produced like almost like a PTSD. You've been bruised and battered and tortured and MK ultra, and all that kind of stuff for the last couple of years. And so it's caused you to have this mindset, and this frequency that you're projecting from was, they're all coming to get me. What's it all for? I don't know what my purpose is. What am I meant to be doing here anymore? It's a very low vibe, and it's a very defeatist sort of attitude and way of looking at things. So a lot of what you talk to for me is inspiring, it's encouraging, and it gives me juice and joy and energy to know that we can have this conversation and we can spread it to as many people as humanly possible, in order to kind of create that ripple effect around the world that encourages everyone to think in the same light. And that's probably the frequency that we're stepping into now, I would say. So hey, listen, in wrapping this up, I understand we've gone on a bit, and I really value everything that you've said. I'm sure the listeners will probably be thinking, like, what can I do right now that would improve my lifestyle, the way I think, feel, and act? More importantly, like, how can I create that energy and that vitality and that vibrance that you're talking about? Because a lot of what you are saying to me in this conversation, it's almost like you aren't just what you eat. You are what you eat eats. It's like, you look at the energy that's in your soil, that's in your plants. What are you eating? Are you eating something that's alive? Or are you eating something that's dead? Is it genetically modified? Has it been sitting in a freezer for 6 weeks before it gets to your shelf and then onto your plate? Is it dead? Is it being injected with so many things? Like, all of that is such an important critical factor to think about what's going in your body, that can then energize you to the point where you are healing on a cellular level. So if I was just meeting you in the street and I said, hey, listen, give me 10 things, or give me 5 things, or give me something, to a direction to go towards, what would you be advising me to do? And I know that everyone's going to go to your website and have a look at all the things you do. And I encourage them to watch all of your information on YouTube and on Instagram, on electroculture and all that kind of stuff, because it's mind boggling how much you know and how much you teach. So anyway, I hand it over to you.
So with the first couple things that are just really simple, one would be connecting with nature, going out hiking, spending 30 minutes in nature, no technology, with your feet in the soil, touching the soil, and do this for 30 days in a row. I guarantee you'll feel like a completely different person after that, because you're connecting with nature. You're going to start to, your cells are going to start to go back to their normal consistency. They're going to start to heal. They're going to start to regenerate. You're going to pick up on that earth resonance, the 7.83 hertz, which is coming out of the earth every single day. That would be number one, because we need to be connected with nature. We cannot be connected to technology 24/7, 365, because then technology is making thoughts for us. It's basically thinking for us the whole time, so we're losing our instinct. Nature gives us our instinct. Same if you ever build a fire. You feel invigorated once you're around fire, because it's just part of your instinct. It's connected to you. So going out into nature is crucial. The second part I would say is trying to start a little garden, even if it's just something small, even if it's just basil, because basil is delicious, and just something like that. Just something small, so that you can be connected to your food and you can grow it. So you can know how it is to grow the food, but also be connected to that food. Because like you just said, shipping things 2,000 miles away, and then it freezes, and then it's sitting in a box, and then it's sitting under LED lights and all of these things, is not food. It's lost its vitality because of just the transportation alone, and then the lights. So at least you can have some homegrown food, which is absolutely delicious, even if you start small and you just try a little plant, just to do something. The next one I would say is opting from conventional foods to all organic. The last study on organic foods was done in 1992, showing that organic yields 100 times more nutrients than conventional. That study, and there has never been another one since. And I wonder why, because it's showing what organic is actually giving the body. So, that would be another option, opting for organic for as many things as you can, and if you can, your whole diet as well. Next would be cleaning up your water, making sure that you have some sort of filtered water or spring water or structured water or distilled water, whichever it may be, whatever you have access to. That's what I always say. There's a great website, findaspring.com. People can look up that and find a spring nearby them. And then the last one that I would say, which is a very crucial one, would be your getting rid of Wi-Fi. If you have Wi-Fi pinging inside the home, that works at a microwave frequency, a radio frequency, which can impact your health. It can impact your sleep, your ability to think, your ability to process. Wi-Fi actually impacts the frontal cortex, and that's where all your thoughts come from. So if this area doesn't work, you can't complete a thought. So even if it's just simply unplugging the Wi-Fi at night or hardwiring all of your devices, nice and simple solution. And then if we're going to pick two last real simple ones, going from LED lights to either candlelight or incandescence, that would be one of your best, because lights play a role on your health. And then also switching your clothes from polyester or polyurethane to natural fibers such as linen, hemp, wool, or cashmere. And those things alone, just those simple 6 things, you can do them in one baby step at a time. Those things will change your life as a whole, because now you're going into the natural route instead of the synthetic route. And you're connecting back to your natural instinct and connecting to nature, and you will instantly begin to heal like that.
Terrific. Matt, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. And again, I want to applaud you for everything that you do. Where can people go and find some more information about you?
So they can find information on cultivateelevate.com. We have a whole plethora of information on there, from blogs and videos. There's an electroculture page as well. And then we also have a YouTube where I just kind of pick a book and kind of just start going through that book and showing a whole bunch of different sides of things, and some older history books as well too. So you can kind of see all different things related to, ways that they used to improve their health too. Because if you look back in time, people were very connected to nature and understanding how they can heal with nature for free. And that's what I'm all about, because the more we're connected to nature, the less we become synthetic.
I love it. Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate you, man. Look forward to maybe catching up with you again soon. We could delve into a number of different topics that we discovered today. So I appreciate you, mate, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
We'll definitely do another. And yes, we could probably talk for hours.
Sweet. All right, mate. Have a great day.
Till next time.